More than 500,000 15-year-olds took part in the OECD's latest global education assessment, known as PISA.
PISA is designed to measure how well students can apply what they've learned in and out of school as they near the end of high school or secondary education. PISA is especially valuable because it measures applied literacy skills, which makes it different from nearly every other major assessment. PISA began in 2000, and since then, every 3 years, 15-year-olds from countries around the world have taken it.
PISA considers an education system successful not only if its students achieve high scores on the PISA surveys, but also if all students from all backgrounds perform well on the tests. For example, a relatively large percentage of disadvantaged students in places like Hong Kong, Shanghai, Korea, and Finland achieve some of the highest scores in PISA. Here are a couple of problems that students had to solve. The first one was part of the reading assessment. Students were shown a graph and an accompanying text that read, Figure 1 shows changing levels of Lake Chad in Saharan North Africa. Lake Chad disappeared completely in about 20,000 BC during the last ice age. In about 11,000 BC, it reappeared. Today, its level is about the same as it was in AD 1000. Students were asked, why has the author chosen to start the graph at this point? This was considered a rather difficult question. In fact, across OECD countries, only 37% of students answered it correctly. Those students showed an ability not only to read, but to think about what they read and draw some conclusions from it. They figured out that the reason the graph starts at around 11,000 BC is because that's when Lake Chad reappeared after having disappeared completely during the Ice Age. Asian economies filled the first 7 places. Top performers, like Shanghai in China and Singapore, even extended their lead since the last PISA test. Some countries, like Qatar, Kazakhstan, and Malaysia, have improved a lot, but from low levels. And some countries that have invested in education reform have seen strong results, including Israel, Brazil, Turkey, Mexico, Portugal, Italy, Poland, Germany, and Greece. The PISA test revealed the impact of efforts by some countries to help their weakest students. Between 2003 and 2012, Brazil, Mexico, Tunisia, and Turkey saw a significant drop in the share of students performing at the lowest levels, as did Poland and Germany. They managed to narrow the gap between high and low-performing students. Some increased equity, too, as many low performers are from the poorest families.
The UK failed to make the top 20 in any subjects.
For all the well-intentioned efforts of past governments, we're still falling further behind the best-performing school systems in the world. In Shanghai and Singapore, South Korea and Hong Kong, indeed even in Taiwan and Vietnam, children are learning more and performing better with every year that passes, leaving our children behind in the global race.
Despite the UK spending more than average on education, there has been no change in the country's abilities in reading, maths and science over the past 6 years. And the National Association of Head Teachers say the coalition's current education strategies just aren't working.
England's performance hasn't changed significantly since the last study in 2009. In maths and reading, we remain average in comparison to other countries and significantly better than average in science. But we don't compare well with the highest performers. 19 countries significantly outperform England in maths. 10 countries significantly outperform England in science. 17 countries significantly outperform England in reading. PISA shows that other countries are doing better than us.
The academic performance of American 15-year-olds hasn't improved over the past decade, while other countries, like Ireland and Poland, are passing the United States. Average scores for U.S. 15-year-olds in 2012 were not different from any of the previous years in any of the subjects. 18 education systems had higher average scores in all 3 subjects: reading, mathematics, and science. Shanghai, China which participated in PISA for the first time in 2009, remained the top performer in the world in all three subjects. The U.S. performed better in reading than in mathematics or science. If you take a closer look at U.S. math scores, you discover that the U.S. had more low-performing students and fewer high-performing students than the international average. In reading and science, the U.S. had about the same percentage of low and high-performing students as the international average.
In the world of the future, being a successful nation will depend on as many pupils as possible getting world-class qualifications in maths, science and English. Get this right, and more young people can look forward to getting great jobs.
We are living through an educational revolution. The pace of change is staggering. Schools, regions, entire countries are turning education on its head and redefining the experiences of students and of teachers. Let's consider for a moment the world in which they live. A world with so much knowledge it's hard to grasp. People are creating 2,000 new websites every hour. They are uploading 35 hours of video every minute and watching 2 billion YouTube videos every day.
There's never been a bigger force for change than technology. It changes absolutely everything about the way we live, the way we get around, the way we eat, even the way we talk to each other.
to a hyper-connected world with more people and fewer resources. A busy and competitive world full of uncertainties. A workforce that is more mobile and better qualified than ever before. And careers that span multiple jobs, positions and skill sets, some of which haven't been invented yet. Education leaders are making big changes, building 21st century skills, using enabling technologies, and personalising learning to engage students in diverse and creative ways.
We have our five senses. So from those five senses, from birth, you acquire an understanding of what makes sense to you, because those are things that you see happen and repeat in your lifetime according to your five senses. Only on the frontier of science, physics in particular, have we been able to grant us access to the universe beyond the capacity of our senses to do so. And what we have found is that the universe does not make sense outside of the realm of the access that our senses has to it. So no longer can you invoke common sense to judge whether or not that's accurate, whether or not it's true, because all that matters is that it's measured to be true. Period. Leave your senses at home. They're of no use to you. I approach life as a scientist and as an educator to try to get people thinking straight in the first place. All right? Trying to teach people not what to think, but how to think. How to interpret information that comes to you. How to think about what somebody says. How to judge what it is that someone else says. Judge the likelihood of it being correct or not. Why is it that every newspaper article that describes an eclipse says, rare eclipse in China? Rare? Eclipses happen every 2.5 years. You don't say, rare Olympics coming up. And Olympics are rarer than solar eclipses. So, do people understand that science is more a process than a list of answers? That's a separate issue from whether the public requires an answer to something. Whether the public comes to doubt the value of science because a result changes from one week to the next. We get textbooks and there's a problem at the end of the chapter and there's an answer to it and you got to get the answer and you start to value the answer rather than the process that would lead to that answer or another. So uncertainty as well as ambiguity are not elements of a science curriculum, but they clearly need to be. Otherwise, you're incapable of thinking in meaningful ways about the frontier of science. And that's what I don't see enough of in this world. There's a level of gullibility that leaves people susceptible to being taken advantage of. I see science literacy as a kind of a vaccine against charlatans who would try to exploit your ignorance. The goal is to empower you to think for yourself. And that's not the impartation of knowledge. That's, I think, the sharing of outlook and perspective and wisdom so that you're empowered to make your next decision.